Winspiration, the way to the essential. On UK Health Radio, Winspiration brings wisdom and information for an extraordinary future. Together, we can shape the world we want to live in. So let's get real and create the idea. Be extraordinary. Welcome to another episode of Winspiration Radio, and today we will talk a bit, talk society, business, and maybe even political aspects. And the guest of the Today Show episode is Michael Schumann, and I know him for 15, 16 years. He once helped me on the press side, press release, and he was working with press, and he is a super connector at different companies as an entrepreneur, and today he is the president, CEO of BWA. That means it's a German short for Bundesverband für Wirtschaft und Außenförderung, what means that is a Federal Association for Economic Development and Foreign Trades. And he is with his organization in a huge amount of countries and supporting businesses, leaders in the business industry and giving them perspective, and is working on a kind of new communication and way of working together. So in this case, I think was on the way to help the world also to get in the political and business area healthier. So welcome, Michael. And if you'd like to add something, please do, or just explain maybe a little bit what is the goal of the BWA.
Well, thank you very much, Wolfgang, for having me on the show. It's a pleasure being here. Thanks for the invitation. BWA, which stands for Bundesverband für Wirtschaftsförderung und Außenwirtschaft, German Federal Association for Economic Development and Foreign Trade, was founded 20 years ago, 2003, in Germany, as an industry and entrepreneurial association that wanted to do things a little bit differently than the existing associations at the time. We were very much influenced by the discussion at the time about newly emerging markets, RICS, mainly. That was a big topic at the time. Emerging global markets in China, in India, in Russia, Brazil, South Africa, where German companies took interest in, but lacked access and sustainable networks. We were also very much influenced by ideas back then coming out of Club of Rome, for example, about what we called an eco-social market economy. That is an economy that is more sustainable, pays more attention to, resource management, climate protection, circular economy, but also pays more attention in terms of, foreign trade to the needs of the countries and the societies that you start projects in. So many of the topics that today are discussed very controversially, we've already been doing since 20 years. And I remember times where you could discuss them quite objectively, and not polarizing. And until today, our slogan is economy, that's all of us, and we're building bridges to good business. So we try to build bridges to bring people together. We are an industry association, yes, but we're also a think tank. And we started it in 2003 as a German entrepreneurial community, helping many German companies to go abroad for the first 7 years. So it was mainly outbound. And then in 2010, we also opened it for foreign companies wanting to come to Germany, build relations with Germany. And then it grew from there. Today, we're in more than 70 countries, and we're also a global economic network. That means we're helping companies from Brazil go to China or from India to connect to France. So it's much more than just the German association how it started.
When you said you were looking what they need, so in the last sentence, where we're helping countries from there and there, is this just the main need, or what you see what is really needed today in doing trades or in society or for the companies?
Well, first of all, if you remember the times back then, and I didn't found BWA. I joined it 3 years later. First as a member, and then I did political work deciding, and then very exciting journey started. But if you remember the times back then, people talk a lot about development aid, for example, looking at African markets, South American markets, or not so developed markets. And this idea was always this like a benevolent gesture towards those markets. And we never really liked that concept. If you say, well, what do these society need? First of all, they need respect. They need an attitude where you see them and view them as agents of their own destiny, right? Mm-hmm. Not as pawns in a geopolitical play, also not as just resources for your own industry. And when we were saying we wanted to have a more sustainable approach to foreign trade, we were thinking that you should support projects that benefits all society. So it's not just distraction. It's also not just using the country as a workbench for cheap labor. Mm-hmm. It's helping projects that give something to that society, and maybe also, and this is a very hotly debated issue these days, to foster change. And what do I mean by change? Here in Germany, you have this discussion, especially when we look at our history of engaging with the Russian market, for example. That people say Germany once followed a concept called change through trade, Wandel durch Handel. And this concept has been utterly discredited nowadays because it apparently failed, right? Bringing more peace to the world. Instead, you have a war in Ukraine. And I think, first of all, you need to get your history right. Concept was never called change through trade. It was called Wandel durch Annäherung, change through rapprochement. Came out of the Ostpolitik of former Chancellor Willy Brandt. But much too often and for too long, people were thinking about this as, well, we trade with another society, we do business with another society, and they should change according to our values, our perceptions, our ideas. Mm-hmm. Change is a very unilateral thing then. It's like they're becoming more similar to us. And we never really bought this concept because ideally, and that's the experience that many entrepreneurs have if they start to engage themselves in different cultures and in new countries, you need a concept of change that is reciprocal, right? Because
that I guess is this a main point, and I don't know if it's just the politics or not enough thinking, because change through trade doesn't mean what they blame today is dependency. Yeah, just trading doesn't mean to create dependency. Like you said, it needs to be a kind of fair trade or reciproc. And just for me, it comes to mind, are they, sorry to say it, so somehow stupid that they don't see the difference? Or is it just ideology and misusing the words, manipulating? I grew up in Bonn, and the German government started in Bonn before both German countries were coming together, and Berlin was then the capital. And at that time in the parliament, there were a lot of entrepreneurs. And today, I think it's nearly nobody there. And over the years, the entrepreneurs were always, I don't have time for all these waste discussions. I want to do something. And in Germany, we say now we have more than 50% of kind of bureaucrats in there who never really were in the normal field of working or building something. So I don't want you to say to stupidity yes or idiocy yes, but I know you always say also it's a lack of competency there in this.
Yes, I think, well, you mentioned quite a number of trends and developments. Maybe let me comment on them one by one. One thing certainly is a development that you were able to witness already for quite some time, and which is a widening gap between the entrepreneurial and economic realm and the politics. Yes, you're right. If you look at the current German parliament, I think 736 members of parliament, and you have like maybe 11 or 14, I guess, entrepreneurs that are still there.
Mm-hmm.
There are reasons why that happened, and it's not just the German trend. You see that in many European societies and democracies at the moment, because politics started to become a career of its own. Right? You very early on in your life, you choose to become a politician. That means while at university, you start to engage yourself in the youth organizations of political parties, and then you rise the ranks if you're clever. But it's an own discourse playing by its own rules, and lacking maybe some substantial experience in other spheres of life.
Would you say, like in the financial crisis, we said, or even within the bank itself said, there is a kind of real world and the financial investing world, and they're separate. Is it the kind of political world and not connected to the real world?
I would be careful with calling it real and unreal, because that implies some sort of judgment. I mean, for the people who do politics who are in there, that is very real. If you look at the schedule of a German member of parliament, he's from early morning until late at night. And we know many, they are really caught in that discourse. And I think, the blame, don't play a blame game, but blame lies on both sides. If you take the example of Germany, for a long time, the German economy, the entrepreneurs, the Mittelstand, they also said, okay, well, the best minister of economy is somebody that we don't see and don't hear from, because we do our business. There's both, I think both parts of society share responsibility for it.
Well, that is not only with the entrepreneurs, it's with everybody. We complain, the government should organize everything for us, a pension, but we are not involved in the community.
Exactly. So what you need to do, instead of just bashing politicians or machines who are responsible or whatever, you need to bridge those two more or less increasingly separate worlds and create places, maybe safe places at the beginning, where you can start a dialogue, begin sharing experience, sharing knowledge. And we do a lot of that. Let me tell you something. If you have young members of parliament, if you have them in a safe space, okay, and you bring them together with entrepreneurs and with people that have seen other countries or lived in other countries, of course they will admit in private that they have no knowledge about, let's say, about India, for example. Or take China, which is more politically charged these days. And of course, if you just ended parliament, you want to, have a successful career, you will not position yourself openly in critical debates against your own party line for it. But in private, they're open. and they're interested, and they're eager to know and to learn. And I think that is what we need. We need less polarizing and more personal exchange. What I think of the most destructive developments in public discourse in recent years is that we tend to exchange arguments in 140 charts, right, on Twitter.
Yes.
That is just, charging it more emotionally. You need to bring people back to the table, just because it's much easier.
Change through meeting.
Change through meeting. Because if I sit in front of you, and if I, say the same thing to your face that I probably, put on Facebook or Twitter or YouTube or whatever, and I see your reaction, and you probably counter that directly. I have to justify myself. We start the human interaction.
You lived in China. You're an expert of China. You even married to the Chinese women and have so-called Chinese family. Just meeting, when we say that, would it really help if we don't understand what kind of training we need for meeting? Because I've never been in China, just Hong Kong or whatever, but it was not really China then. It was more British. And they say if you don't understand them, they say yes and no, but they mean something different. They're losing the face. And I think, so how you can build the understanding? Or is it true that in China, that you can trust someone, you need to be in the family, meet the mother, then you're safe? But now you have a meeting with Chinese people in Berlin and the mother is not there. What is needed that really a meeting can be there to approach each other and creating trust?
Well, first of all, I think, and that holds true not only for China, it holds true for any other culture, which you should approach it with an open mind.
Yeah.
Not try to put your way of thinking as the idea that informs your judgments. Just look, listen, and learn.
Mm-hmm.
And one thing that, and then something that really impressed me a lot, and that made me think a lot during the time that I lived in China, were two observations. First, how they approach learning, development through learning from others. And, we all talk about that amazing development that they achieved in a very few decades that Europe needed centuries.
Mm.
And the idea was always, and that was, of course, encouraged also by the state, by the company, society as a whole, go to other countries, go anywhere basically, where you see things that work better than they do in China.
Yeah.
Learn and understand why that it is the case and how you can bring it back and adopt it and maybe also improve on it so that we can use that to make our infrastructure, our technology, our society number one. So this basically it was.
Is this a cultural thing, or is this more also the political decision?
No, it's a cultural thing. It's a cultural thing. Sure, Confucianism was very strong in China. Cultural thing, and then you had, of course, Deng Xiaoping say, open up, go to Singapore and learn first. So this is what they've been doing, learning from others, number one. And the second,
the Japanese did the same. Right?
Yeah, so I think
we're famous when the camera running around.
Exactly. Remember the time where we did that too, right? If you recall how Made in Germany came about, I mean, we learned from British who were leading it.
Mm-hmm.
Different atmosphere and attitudes in Germany back then. But yes, you're right. I mean, it's like I learned it in China. I would say it holds true for many Asian societies. Also, that they focus on merit. We have a lot of discussions right now about political systems and forms of governance, what you could see in these societies. And what I observed in China was that a lot was based on merit, and they have a very carefully orchestrated system, highly competitive, how to select their politicians and people who will bear responsibility. And unlike, the political career that you have in many Western countries nowadays, a lot of that is based on merit. So they have to study something like, what we would call like a MINT subject or whatever. They have to excel at university. They work in companies, state-owned companies. They collect experience in how to run a company or department or whatever. And they go into administration, civil administration. They learn it, from a small town or city, coming to a larger, then coming to a province, until they get any kind of responsibility at the top. So the people that you meet there, maybe they are technocrats to some extent, but their career is based on competence and merit to a large extent. And I think you can learn from that. It doesn't mean
it should be always. Yeah, if I go in the hospital, I'm happy if I meet a doctor with competence and not just that he is in the right party or whatever. And here comes also for me the question if it's culture or whatever. I'm the purpose guy. Like to go deeper into the intention. The intention, I feel, is so different, and it's not just a system. Because when they say that the Chinese system and the kind of dictatorship is that better than democracy, then it says, okay, if dictatorship is good, then should work in North Korea as well, good, but it's not. So what is the real intention? And they say we want to be better, we want to be the best in this, we want to be the best in that. But let's say the German politicians don't have the idea we want to be best, we want to have the competence. It's more like, like you said, go in university, in the party, and how I succeed in the party.
Well, I mean, you have that too. I think maybe I wouldn't overgeneralize this, but I think first of all, this whole discussion of systemic rivalry, democracies versus autocracies, etc., etc. I believe not to be very helpful. It's understandable. Why is it understandable? Because it reduces complexity. We're going through a phase of major transformations. We had a global crisis of unprecedented scale with the corona pandemic. We witnessed the war in Ukraine. We have great challenges that all humanity is facing. It's global warming, environmental issues, health, hunger, poverty, etc. So people here, especially people here in the West and in Europe and in Germany, they are deeply insecure, and they feel that something major is changing, right? And also, we had a very first bipolar and then unipolar global order in terms of the Cold War back in, you mentioned like 70s, 80s. It was a clear paradigm there. There was a Western Bloc against the Eastern Bloc, right? And then with the fall or the collapse of the Soviet Union, people were Fukuyama was saying the end of history, right? The unipolar world. And now we see something shifting, right? So that creates anxieties, that creates fear. Maybe it also creates discomfort in the United States that there's a new global order coming. And these narratives, good versus evil, autocracy versus democracy, etc., they help you on the surface because they reduce complexity. They make the world explainable. That's why so many people buy it. But of course, they are, in my opinion, very, very dangerous because they reduce the complexities of many different countries and the ways they are governed.
Yeah.
To a simple dichotomy, and that is more polarizing, that is endorsing confrontation instead of cooperation, and that is not helpful. In essence, it's not helpful because it divides instead of bringing societies and countries together to face common challenges. And maybe if you allow, I would like to pick up one more point you mentioned, and that is the topic of dependency. Maybe we can discuss about that later.
Okay, let's make a short break and then we talk about dependency.
UK Health Radio, the station that makes you feel good. UK Health Radio, the station that makes you feel good.
Okay, dependency is the word you just mentioned, as we need to talk later, but we can do it directly.
Okay, great. Well, again, that is, like with these new narratives of autocracies, democracies versus democracies. You have this other narrative about, dependency versus independency.
Mm-hmm.
As I said,
we just wanted to understand what you mean with dependency. Is just where someone has more power over the other, or they have the resources, the others don't have the resources, or what exactly you mean with the dependency?
We're talking about risk here. We're talking about geopolitical risk as a new factor that's also affecting national security topics or economic areas. And again, as I said before, there are many reasons why this is coming up so predominantly these days. Because there's a lot of insecurity and a heightened perception of risk. And that in itself is nothing bad. I mean, we noticed here during the pandemic that suddenly we couldn't get urgently needed protection materials, for example, because they were all produced in China and they needed it for themselves. That's the time before they then open and send it throughout the world. We're experiencing a breakdown of industrial and supply chains. And until now, for example, with pharmaceutical products, it's very difficult to find basic children medicines in Germany right now. They are in extreme shortage. And we had the Russian energy question, where we suddenly found out that, buying all our energy from Russia became a very hotly debated topic at that time. Prices skyrocketing, and so the perception was if you are too reliant or over reliant on a specific economic area or on specific partners, that may be a risk. And then you see another trend, which I think is a scourge of our time these years, and that's a weaponization of economy. Right? Mm-hmm. Before we were thinking of economy as helping to bring people together, and suddenly you see nations weaponizing economy. And to be fair, actually, first really started at a large scale were the United States. I mean, China also weaponized the economy. Look at Australia or Lithuania, but that's a scourge. So that is adding to this perception of risk. And then suddenly you have this debate where people say, okay, you need to analyze dependency. You need to decouple from somebody, or you need to de-risk our risk. And to some extent that is justified. Yes, sure. If you look at pharmaceutical products, you should make sure that you have ample supply, even if there are new crises. And maybe you also should relocate production so to be able to supply your population. If you are too dependent in terms of critical raw materials, and you might be cut off from those supplies one day because others say they need for themselves, for example. Also, you should have alternative sources. So to that extent, it is totally legitimate, right, to do that. The problem that I have, or that we have with this discourse on dependency, it took on a dynamic of its own. And especially if you look at discourse, how it's applied to European Chinese economic relations, you always hear about we're too dependent and dependency is bad and blah, blah, blah. And you have a discourse with an underlying idea, an implicit underlying idea that dependency is bad and being independent in itself is something that we should strive for. But dependency is something fundamentally human. Maybe if you substitute dependency with the term that you need to be able to rely on one another, that becomes more objective. I mean, look, basic human class relations, take a family or the marriage or whatever, you are dependent on each other.
So it is, you have glasses, I have glasses, we are depending, someone is doing the glasses and pain.
If you have to rely on each other, it's working in a team, at work, you need to be able to rely on your colleagues. If you play sports, you need to be able, in a good soccer team, to rely on others.
And isn't it not there, when you were talking about the risk and dependency? I feel also, you lived in Asia. I'm not. I lived in Germany. Like the former Chancellor Helmut Schmidt said, we Europeans should understand that by the end of the century, when we might be 5% or maximum 8% of the world population, but we still feel maybe dependency that a country on its own or Europe on its own could regulate everything and will not be dependent. But if we look at our car industry, we're dependent from other countries that they buy the cars. We are dependent from a lot of things. We can't survive alone.
Exactly, because what holds true at these fundamental levels of human interaction, human life, I think was also true as a level of global community, global economy, and certainly for a country like Germany that is an industrial nation, whose success for all these years was grounded in multilateral economic relations on a large international scale. I mean, what do we have in Germany? We don't have resources except innovation and ideas. There's this famous campaign, Germany, the land of ideas. We can only innovate and produce and then export, right? So this is the difficulties that we have with this polarizing debate on dependency, because it's more dividing than uniting. And also what you just mentioned, there's a ongoing discussion in the international sphere on global governance and how to reform global governance, for example. And the Chinese came up with a concept which in itself, also it has been discussed quite controversially, but in itself put forward the notion of the global community as a community with, as I say, a common destiny and a shared future, in which you are, to some extent, dependent upon each other because then you'd be able to rely on each other.
But in any healthy family, you are
in a healthy family in which countries contribute to the global destiny according to their abilities, and skills, and in which you look more at cooperation and to some extent also tolerance and other development paths and other ways of organizing and governing cultures to face the common challenges that we are facing. I have much sympathy for this concept.
Yeah, and if I have the right information, then one of the first big leaders, Gorbachev, had that idea already. At least one of his advisors, whatever, they had that. He was just too early, and with nobody else. And it's a simple win-lose or win-win idea. And we are not really there. We are still playing too much win-lose and not have the creativity or here comes in the intention for win-win. But that's why I also can go with the idea, because I feel behind is, if we can trust it all, I believe it, but we need to go there to a win-win.
I think, first of all, as I said, that's not really a genuine contradiction. Like facing risk and being mindful about risk and endorsing cooperation.
Life is risky. Yes.
Yeah, it's not a contradiction. You can cooperate and still balance and manage your risk.
Yeah.
And so this public debate is misleading.
Yes.
And then, a good entrepreneur is, some learn very painfully, right?
Yes.
Eventually you learn that, risk, right?
Yeah, it's nobody has the crystal ball. The entrepreneurial decisions always a kind of bet for the future.
Right. So, yes, and of course there were visionaries in many different cultures, leaders from politics or society, whatever, who put forward very similar concepts.
Yeah. We're recording now here, and I'm sitting in South Africa. So I'm in the Rainbow Nation, and we were confronted with results of Mandela. Also that not in the pure sense he lived, it went on. But it's amazing what was possible with these polarities there to create a so-called rainbow nation. So what we are talking about is a kind of rainbow planet.
And we should also, you mentioned the example of South Africa. We should also have some confidence.
Yeah.
That societies are able to solve their conflicts by themselves.
Yeah.
And maybe be less normative in everybody, or prescribing everybody what they should do and how they should do it.
Yeah.
Yes, certainly. We have certain values that we all share, hopefully. And it's the Universal Declaration of Human Rights that was agreed upon at the United Nations level, right? There it says, if you take the time to actually read it, a lot of people, talk about it, but you should take the time to read that. It's an ideal, right?
Mm-hmm.
It is not something that is here yet. It's an ideal. And the societies approach it differently. And of course, we should do the best to if we believe that the way, we live together is a good one, then we should lead by example.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you lead by example.
Yeah, the change you want to see in the world. Yeah.
Yeah, the change you want to see. That holds true for the the way we govern, and then you invite people to come and look. I mean, I'm hearing nowadays that you're talking about exclusion. Don't invite students from China to come to Europe anymore. Dutch would put forward a concept of reducing the number of Chinese students at Dutch universities. But you can take many other countries. We have more than, I think, 18 or 19,000 students in Germany from Iran, right? If you want to be the change that you want to see, you should invite them and see how we live. But that implies, of course, that you can convince them, and that means
But that implies that we need to change a deep core belief, and what I mean by that, after a short break.
UK Health Radio, the station that makes you feel good. UK Health Radio, the station that makes you feel good.
The deep core belief it changed, and it's now a principle in those 10x companies, and that we are not linear thinking, so even exponential thinking. And the basic is to understand in the past on planet Earth, if it's companies, if it's nations, it was always managing the lack of, do I have enough land? Do I have enough water? Do I have enough these resources? So all was built on scarcity. And the new model should be to really understand abundance. So really in abundance, like I said, in the past, we made our wealth with sickness and war. If we really understand it in cooperations, we can create so much greater wealth with peace and health. But then you need to believe in abundance. And that's what I feel is what you're saying. If we come together and see the possibilities, we are simply stupid if we fight off whatever the basket.
Yeah, I would agree, but I think there are some prerequisites for that. Number one, if we were talking about be the change you want to see, right?
Mm-hmm.
And especially if you're talking about other societies, developing societies that now have a new gain strengths and are changing. You need to be honest with yourself.
Yeah.
So you need first of all, an honest analysis. Look at Germany right now. Are we still an example for the world? If you look at our infrastructure, if you look at the debates, inside the division in the society, if you look at homeless people on the street, poverty, whatever, education. So get your own act in order first.
Yes.
So that gets to be inspiring for others. So you need. Second, I think you need some new sense of humility. It was we are arguing out of a position of privilege and a position of strengths that was accumulated of many centuries at the expense of other nations, to be quite honest.
Mm-hmm.
And we're leading this, but I'm no friend of cancel culture. It doesn't help no one to take down statues or prohibit books that not read in history anymore. I mean, this is our cultural heritage, right? But I am a friend of realizing that out of that past, now, if you look at these emerging nations and economic areas, you should exercise some sort of humility, not teach them and lecture them.
Yes.
And I think these and then maybe what you said, the core beliefs and the concepts and paradigm in which we measure progress and satisfaction maybe also need to change. Earlier this year, I had the honor that BWA was visited in Berlin by the Prime Minister of Bhutan, which is a small country that has closed itself off from the world for quite some time. But they, of course, are famous because they have that policy of national gross happiness that they're pursuing. So pursuing a policy of governance where you look at how can you improve the happiness of the people, I think that would be a major change in politics.
Yes, and that is what we're preaching for a long time. I'm a friend of the basic idea of Human Development Index, which it's not just about the gross domestic product, which measures what all were stuff just because of invoices. And a lot of wise people say the main thing is to be happy while we're living. In our short period of time we are on planet Earth, why we're stressing us so much. Yeah. And if I look at my body, okay, I need blood, but the meaning of life is not collecting blood. Yeah. So it's not money. And even the guy who founded the Forbes magazine, the founder said companies are there to make people happy, and government should organize it. So I think I totally agree with you that it's about really creating a better environment for humans that they can really live a fulfilled life.
But there too, we've known each other for some years, and I know the work that you've been doing with entrepreneurs about helping them to find their purpose and the vision for their companies. And I think right now, at least in some Western societies here, we also take Germany for example. We have this unhealthy opposition between politics and entrepreneurial activities, where the prevailing idea is that you have that if you don't regulate business, okay, they will not really contribute to the social well-being or social good. That just after profits, there's no responsibility. You have to regulate and educate and bring policies about to make them into people with a conscience, right, and morale, and then some ethics. I think that is wrong.
It's totally wrong, but it's let's say we come back to core beliefs, and if you go and study medicine, you study medicine, and you don't learn about nutrition, you don't learn about hormones really. So where we end up with so many doctors is the public health here? Not really. And that is the same thing. We should focus what is healthy, what makes a body fit, what makes a company fit. Are the employees, the cells of the company, and so on. And like, if we now think globally,
this is the outrageous statement in itself. If you look at as a discussion about value-driven business in Germany, for instance, that you say, well, entrepreneurs don't have values. You need a new value orientation. I mean, you and I, we met so many of them, and of course, it builds up a company. If you run a company, maybe several generations, you take care of your employees. They're looking. Of course, you have values, and you act according to values. And I've seen so many instances where German, and this is what we also come back to BWA. Have been doing this, building those bridges where German companies go into foreign markets, and of course they build their companies according to their entrepreneurial values. And that transforms the society in which they act. Of course, that works both ways. But by acting in that society, it also transforms the entrepreneur. By learning, for example, that the Chinese are much more pragmatic and much more fast. Like a fitness studio for them, it transforms them too. So that is past. In this time, also we're saying companies, the fast, not just the biggest win. Are you fast? And fast time. The interview is already nearly by the end. So thank you very much. But I'd like you to finish with where we say, okay, what would be the key principles? Let's say 3 key principles where you say what is important for BVA and the companies, for all those who might like to join in one of these 70 countries. So what is it where BVA and value stands for? Well, first of all, I mean, we are a business association. So it's a business. And we try to build bridges to good business. I mean, you need to, you can change the world, but if you don't have the means to do that, you need to be successful materially in business as well. Okay. This what we find. And but in doing we have the core belief that economy is all of us, right? And that you should do by learning from each other, by having an open mind and listening and analyzing first before you judge. And then also by trying to bring the experiences that you make abroad of things that work better or are better organized, for example, bring that back home, up to give back to society, which is not just materially, like, no, it's so much more. Give back to society means what you see there. Improve. Traveling educates. Maybe not like engaged in these very large narratives of political debates that don't really change a lot. Change, that's the most basic level. And to conclude, we've brought together so many hundreds and thousands of companies, but you don't bring abstract entities together. It's always two people. It's all about humans. It's all about it. And all the 3 principles you mentioned is about humans as well. It's not just for companies.
Thank you very much, Michael, for showing that there are entrepreneurs who have a different opinion, and for your work to bring on the global level companies together and do something for, like I call it from here, the rainbow planet. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you for having me again, and have a good day.
This was another episode of Winspiration, Wisdom and Information to support you getting out of illusions, false identifications, limiting beliefs. We all have the power and potential to be more, do more, have more, give more. Reality is what is possible in the universe, and the best is yet to come. If you want to dive deeper into possibilities of creating the extraordinary future, go to winspiration.global or to wolfgangsonnenburg.com. More information and some free downloads like the email program Dream Goals Reality or a copy of the book The Best Is Yet to Come can be found on the UK Health Radio website under the Listen on Demand and Presenters section. Join us again next week on the Winspiration Show for more wisdom and information to create your extraordinary future.